everyone, welcome back to the workshop. I hope you're all doing well. Now in this video I'm going to be making some dowels using the router table. So it's a very nice skill to have to be able to make your own dowels, because you can make them any size, any diameter, and from any type of material or any type wood type you want. So it doesn't limit you to what's available in your local hardware store. And buying hardwood dowels can be quite expensive and they can be quite pricey. So to be able to make your own ones is quite handy indeed. And you can use up some scraps that you have in your workshop as well to make these. So we're going to use a router table to do this. There's kind of two approaches we can take. I'll show you both of them. And yeah, we'll crack on and make some dowels. Now I just want to thank Traderify for sponsoring today's video. So I'll tell you more about them in a minute. Let's crack on. Okay, so let's take a look at what we're going to be using. So like I said, we're going to be using the router table itself in order to achieve this. And we're going to be using round over bits. Now I recommend you get yourself some decent router bits, some decent round over bits. The real cheap ones, the radiuses can be off on them and they don't really last and they're not quite round. But a decent set, you don't have to spend an absolute fortune, but a good set, maybe like Trend or like I like these ones. These are by ENT. I found them to be really good quality and they don't break the bank. So what we're going to be using in this video is an 8mm radius round over bit. That's going to give us a 16mm diameter dowel. So just remember that your dowel will be twice your radius, so your diameter is twice the radius. So if you use an 8mm bit, it'll give you a 16mm rod. If you use a 5mm bit, it'll give you a 10mm dowel. If you want a 1-inch dowel, use a 1/2-inch bit. If you want a 1/2-inch dowel, use a 1/4-inch bit, and so on. You get the idea. So we have to go cut some stock now on the table saw. We're going to be making some 16mm dowels using an 8mm round over bit. So we got to cut 16mm square stock. Let's do that. Okay, have a small piece of cherry offcut here. We'll use this. It'll be good enough for this demonstration. So we're just going to run, like I said, through the table saw and cut a perfect square piece of 16mm stock. Let's do that. Okay, so just cut two pieces of 16mm square cherry stock, and we're going to use this to make our dowels. Now, before we continue on, I just want to thank Traderify for sponsoring today's video. Now, Traderify is a complete job management platform designed for self-employed tradespeople. So if you're a tradesperson anywhere in the world and you're struggling with your office work, definitely check it out. I'm a self-employed electrician and I use it, and it saves me about 8 hours a week in office work alone, as well as a whole pile of headaches. So it's desktop and mobile based, so you can carry your office with you in your pocket, both iOS and Android, and it's everything from quoting to invoicing to scheduling work, even managing a small crew through it. And you can also tie it in with your accounting software at the end of the year to keep on top of all that stuff as well, and it does so much more. So definitely check it out. I'll link it below, and there's also a promo code Man in Shed for 50% off for your first 3 months. So remember, if you're in the trades and you're struggling with the office work, get down there, check it out. There's a 14-day free trial, no strings attached. Play around with it for the 14 days and see how it can help you out. It's helped me out and it saves me a whole pile of time as well. So I've no problem recommending it to you guys. Now, let's get on and make some dowels. Okay, so the 8mm round over bit is in the router. Now I just need to set it up with the top of my router table. So I want the edge of my round over bit to be just below the surface of my table. So if I go right up to the corner, I'm just catching that there. So I just want to drop that slightly, just until the material passes over it. You can even come back up a touch there. So right about there, just so I can feel it dragging over the top of that, and that's it there. So that's perfectly flush now with the top of my table. Now let's set up the fence. Okay, so when it comes to setting our fence, what I want to do is just bring the bearing guide perfectly in line with the fence. So we're not going to use the bearing guide completely as reference, we're going to use the fence as well. So I just want to bring that in. It's kind of hard to get the right angle on this, but you guys might just be able to see. You better see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to take this piece of stock, I'm just going to press it against the fence and bring the guide bearing perfectly flush with the fence. Now, as I'm moving that backwards and forwards, the guide bearing is just rolling. So it's perfectly flush with the fence. So I'm going to lock my fence down there like that now. I'll try and get you guys a better angle so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so you can see the guide bearing for this router bit is there, and if I just raise this up, I'm just running it back and forth, and it's perfectly flush with my fence now, and that's exactly where I need it to be. So that's how we set it up. So the bit perfectly flush with our top, and the guide bearing perfectly flush with your fence, and we're good to go. Okay, so our router, our bit and our fence are all set, ready to go. So we've two approaches we can take here. We can use push blocks to push this over the bit and hold the dowel against it as we're cutting it. And in doing that, we're going to leave two square ends on the dowel in order to keep this dowel stable. Now I find this works really well when you're doing larger dowels, so say from 1/2 inch up. But when it comes to the smaller dowels, I find using the feather board the best. But I'll show you two of them in this, or both approaches in this video. So first up, we're going to use our push blocks. We're going to leave square ends on our dowels to help support that dowel. So let's do that first. Okay, so we're set up, we're going to use our push blocks. We're going to make our first dowel. I'm just going to talk you through the approach here, because obviously when this thing starts going, you guys won't be able to hear me. So I'm going to use my push blocks. I'm going to start about 1 inch or 2 in from the end, and I'm going to stop about 1 inch or 2 from the end as well. That will keep both ends perfectly square, and it will support the dowel and stop it moving as it becomes more round. So it's a good approach to keep the dowel nice and supported, and you will get a better finish doing it like this. But it doesn't work so well on smaller diameter dowels, which I'll explain now in a minute. So it's just going to be a case of using the push blocks. I'm going to push this into the bit, run it down along the fence, and pull it away when I get 1 inch or 2 from the end, and then we'll rotate it and we'll go on and so forth. You'll see me do it now. Like I said, it's going to get a bit noisy, so I won't be able to talk you through the process, but that's what we're going to be doing. Okay, so goggles and ear protection, and keep your hands well away from that router blade. Okay, there's our first dowel cut. You can see how quick and easy this is to make dowels. There's a 16mm diameter dowel now cut using the technique of the push blocks and keeping the ends square. Now the beauty of doing this, like I said, is the dowel is supported, so it can't roll. It has two square ends, so it's always supported. Like I said, making larger dowels like this 1 inch dowel, this is definitely the way to go, and use the push blocks to keep your hands well away from it. Now, another nice thing about it is the square edge references the fence, and obviously references the top of the table, as well as keeping everything from moving. But the big disadvantage to this, I find, is when you're making smaller dowels, say like a 10mm dowel like this, they're very flexible. And when you're pushing with these push blocks, you can actually push the dowel in further into the bit. You can get a kind of bit of inconsistency. So I do find it a lot harder to get a consistent dowel once you get down to the smaller diameters, because it's a lot more flexible. That's why I find the feather boards can be slightly better. But it's definitely the best technique for the larger dowels upwards, because you have that support with the square ends, and you can rotate it, and you can always reference the fence with it as well. So definitely one of the best ways to go, and you get a nice finish on that. Now, obviously, bear in mind you're going to have to leave 1 inch or 2 both ends, so whatever your dowel length needs to be, allow a little bit extra for those square ends so you can cut them off, and you should be good to go. And I wouldn't go too big on these. Maybe 16 inches, say 400mm would be the longest I would try and make dowels using this method, because like I said, they do start to flex the longer they get, and you can get lots of inconsistencies in your dowel. Now, let's look at the feather board method. It's nice and simple. There is a little con to that as well, which I'll show you. So there's pros and cons to both of these approaches. So let's set up our feather board and let's repeat the process. Okay, next approach is to use a feather board. Now, I like this for making the smaller dowels for reasons I've just explained. There's some advantages to doing it this way. Number one, I can put my guard back in place, which is always good to have a guard on your router table, so my push blocks would hit my guard otherwise, so I had to take it off, but that's back in place, so safety first. Another nice thing is that we're going to get a round dowel all the way to the ends of our piece, so we don't have to add on anything else. We get a full length dowel out of this. We're not losing an inch or two off the end, which is nice. But there is one tricky part to this. That's on the final cut, which I'll show you and explain to you when we get to the final cut. So I'm just going to push this guy through now. We're going to rotate it 3 times, and on the 4th time I'm going to stop. I'm going to show you what it looks like and where the issue occurs. But once you take your time, it's not too big a deal. So let's do that now. Okay, so we've taken our 3 cuts. If you guys can see it there, I can get this in front of the camera. Let's get the camera to focus on that. There we go. So we've got 3 cuts, so it's almost completely round. So you can see what we're left with now. On the 3rd cut, we have no flat reference edge to go against either our table or the fence. All we have is this sharp corner. If the camera would stay focused on it. There we go. So that corner now has to sit in against this edge of our fence. And that's all that's stopping this piece now from rotating. So you can get a bit of movement, and if you get a bit of movement, you can get an inconsistent dowel. But it does lock into that bottom corner and push on through. And like I said, I find this the best approach for making smaller dowels because, again, of the flex that you get in a smaller dowel. If you have 2 square ends, obviously the dowel itself now is not touching the table and it's not touching the fence. The square ends are. So you can actually push it down into the table a bit, and you can push it into the fence a bit, I find. That's just my opinion on doing these things. But yeah, this approach works well for the smaller ones. I would use the push block approach for the larger dowels, leaving the square ends. That will give you your best result. So let's pass this one on through. Now again, like I said, I'm going to lock that sharp corner that I have left into the corner between my table and my fence. That should keep it, with the feather board, that should be pretty stable. But once I get out this side, obviously that corner is gone now. So there's nothing keeping this side from rotating. And when I get to the end, I only have that bare little bit of that sharp edge to keep this whole thing stable. So that's where this thing can run into issues. So just got to be careful of that. Okay, so there's our 2 dowels created, one using the square end method and the push blocks, and one using the feather board and a complete round dowel. Now I don't know if it came out on camera or did you guys notice, as soon as this last bit came through the router bit, it immediately twisted the dowel on me. So it's just something to be careful of. You might get a little bit of waste on the end, because once that little sharp edge comes off, there's nothing to stop this dowel from rolling, and you can either take a bit out or have a high spot or something like that. But not really too big an issue. And like I said, it's the best method for when you're making smaller dowels. This method is definitely the way to go if you want more support and if you're making larger dowels. So let's finish these dowels now. I'll show you a quick and handy way to finish these to make sure they're perfectly round and that they're all sanded up and that you have no marks left off the router bit. Okay, so now that our dowels are all made, we have dowels of all different diameters, sizes and materials here, so it's nice to be able to make our own dowels. Now, next thing we want to do is just get them sanded up, and the quickest and easiest way to do that is stick them in a drill. Now, this will work for up to 12mm or 1/2 inch dowels. Any more than that, I'm not going to go into these chucks. So a bit of sandpaper in the hand, wrap it around it, and just sand it out. Just take any of the tool marks or any of the sharp or flat spots that might be left over from the actual router bit. And you don't have to go too much. A few seconds up and down will do the job. And again, don't spin it too fast or spin too long, because you will reduce the diameter of that bit or that dowel fairly quickly. And when you're done then, a bit of sanding up and down, because you're putting circular scratch patterns into this. And once you put the finish on, that will be visible. So just again, you want to work those scratch patterns down the length of the dowel as well. Now, larger dowels can be a bit of an issue, but you can reduce one end so that it fits in the chuck. If you don't want to do that, you can get a socket like this, say for a 1-inch dowel, you can jam that into your socket and you can spin it like this in an impact driver. But again, this thing has a ton of torque, so be very, very careful. No long sleeves. You don't want anything getting wrapped up in this because this will pull your fingers off in seconds. Just be careful when you're doing it. So the socket can fit onto any size dowel. So if you have a socket set, like I said, you can fit that onto any size dowel and that will do the job. That's one way out of it. Other than that, screw something into the end of the dowel that will fit into your smaller drill and you're away to go. So there we go. Okay guys, so there we go, one video on how to make your own dowels using your router table. Like I said, it's a great skill to have to be able to make your own dowels because you can make them out of any wood type you want. You'll always have them in your shop. You can use up your scrap pieces as well, and you can really add them to your project, so it doesn't limit you to what's in the hardware store. Now that's all assuming you don't have a lathe, of course, but even if you do have a lathe, I find that method to be much easier to get a consistent dowel, especially the smaller diameter dowels. I'm not very skilled on my lathe and I do struggle to turn a perfect diameter the whole way down, especially with the smaller ones that have a bit of flex in them. I find that to be extremely easy to do and very consistent results as well. So there you go guys, hopefully you've enjoyed that video. Hopefully it's been informative to you. Give it a thumbs up if you have, and don't worry, if you're a hand tool woodworker, you might be a bit annoyed at this video. He's saying you should be making these by hand. There is methods for making dowels by hand with hand planes and stuff like that. So if you want to see that, I can do a make your own dowels by hand video as well. So that's it guys, I'm going to get out of here now. Thanks as always to everybody over on Patreon for your continued support guys. It's very much appreciated indeed. So until the next video and the next project, I shall see you then. Take it easy.